Who wants to explain like the educational background and what it actually takes? So for people who are thinking of getting into this, do I want to go to school for 4, 5, 6 years? How hard is it? What if I, what subjects do I have to teach? Those kind of, that type of question. So who would want to speak on what they did educationally to get there?
I mean, I'm happy to. So my original background, I had a degree in anthropology. So it's a little easier, I guess. I don't want to say easier, but easier to get your teacher's certificate if you already have a degree. So if you're already someone who has a degree and you want to get into teaching, it's not going to take a full 4 years to get into it. But in order to just, if you want to come right out of high school and become a teacher, it's about 4 years. If you want to be a teacher and you love students and you love your subject and you're interested in the content, it's not hard. I mean, of course you got to put in the work, it's college, but it's not going to be, everybody knows you do better in subjects that you really love than subjects that, you're not that into. So if you're into it, you want to do it, you can do it.
So a lot of teachers, like you said, if you're coming right out of high school going into college, then you come right back to school. So especially you, and you're not a stranger to the newspaper or the cameras based on your high school career. So you knew in high school that you wanted to.
Yeah, so pretty much I took a class at Selinsgrove that was called Intro to Exceptionalities. I took it my freshman year, and I got to go into the classroom, into the life skills classroom. So it was really cool for me to be able to go in and I think just being able to have that real hands-on experience right off the bat kind of made me fall in love with just helping people, especially students with disabilities, and kind of led me on the track to be a special education teacher then. And I think it's just awesome too, because you don't realize, especially being a regular ed student, kind of the difficulties and struggles that certain students go through, regular ed or special ed students throughout the day. I was always blessed to have a really good life and have really good parents who provided for me. So for me to be able to have that type of just atmosphere and to be in that, it really led me to want to just do something in education to be able to just help students.
Go ahead.
Okay. So in high school, I graduated from shikellamy, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the career exploratory program. So I actually got to go right next door to where I'm teaching right now and spend afternoons my senior year there, and I learned a lot there. And if you are a high school student thinking about going into teaching, I highly recommend trying to get into a career exploratory program because it gives you a lot of experience and your foot in the door. And then I went to Bloomsburg University for 4 years and graduated with the early childhood education. And that, was said earlier, it's a really good experience in college when you love what you're doing and when you get to know that the outcome is to be helping students. You really love your experience in college.
Can I piggyback?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I graduated from shikellamy also, and in second grade I had Mrs. Slayton. She was phenomenal, and she always just made me want to be a teacher. So when I was a senior in high school and I went to career exploratory, I went back with her. So 10 years later, she was still amazing as ever. And it just secured that even more for me that I was going to be a teacher one day. And another candidate that was selected for this interview was Lacey Troutman, and she had a very similar experience, but with her 5th grade teacher. So when speaking of inspiration to be a teacher, she was talking about her 5th grade teacher.
So with that being said, and you said you went and were able to, I guess, kind of find your destiny to come into this field. Is it anything different that you didn't expect when you first started? So you see all the, going through school and you're excited to get on your first day, and then you get here to wherever that may have been or here, and what do you see? What were some of the surprising things that you would have never expected or did not learn in college?
I can talk a little bit about it. So I went to Bloomsburg as well, and obviously Bloomsburg's great education for actual education. And one thing that you're kind of hammered textbook, philosophy, and then you get into your student teaching, and then you're like, oh, I didn't know anything about education until you actually get hands-on and do it. And then when I got into high school, it was funny because I went from kindergarten, teaching that for my student teaching, and then into high school life skills. And I think for me, just handling people who were kind of similar in age to me almost. It was definitely interesting, and the cool thing about teaching is that every day is different. You're never going to get the same type of day. That's something that I kind of love, but I expected, but it's also the unexpected, what happens every day, and especially being in a life skills classroom and dealing with students who have intellectual disabilities. Sometimes like emotions can get pretty high, or people can just be like really tired sometimes, or like super excited over like the simplest things, but it's like a really genuine like happy environment all the time that I'm glad I'm a part of, but it's just the unexpected that happens every day is kind of cool about the job.
So I remember my first day of school, and I was so excited, and then I got here and I was looking at all the students and I was like, oh my gosh, they have such mean faces and because they didn't know who I was and I didn't know who they were, and I came home that day and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I went back the next day and just kept my same like bubbly personality, and once they got to know me, like the second and third day, I was like, this is the best job I've ever had in my life. I was like, why did I not do this right out of college? And so, I don't know, I knew it was going to be great. I knew I was going to love it. But just the interactions that you have with the students and the relationships that you form with them, it's like, it's insane. Every day is just amazing because I get to talk to and hang out with and interact with these awesome kids.
What about you two guys?
Sure. So my experience was a little bit different coming out of high school and everything. I originally went into nursing, so my route was a lot different. It was not until I got about halfway through my nursing career, or my nursing college career, that I realized that nursing was not the career for me. But I did go to school with two things in mind. It was I wanted to do science, and I wanted to have an impact on someone's life. So knowing those two things, education was the perfect place for me, my perfect niche, and I couldn't be happier where I am.
So I came to Shikellamy last year in October after spending 11 years in primary grades. And so transitioning to the middle school for me was very, very difficult. I student taught middle school. I graduated in 2011, so spring of 2011 I student taught in middle school, and I never had the desire to go back. And then this opened and kind of felt like it was in my plan to go back. And so I kind of went with that, interviewed, received the job, and then I can honestly say I would not take it back for a minute. I absolutely love coming to school every day. My students are outstanding, and I think one of the best things about Shikellamy is the diversity. I came from a very rural district where there wasn't a lot of diversity, and now, I have experienced so much more just culture and just learning a lot of things about these kids, which I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have before. So.
Like kind of what Logan said, during student teaching, I was teaching high school life skills, and now I'm an autistic support teacher for kindergarten through second grade. So it's a big dynamic change. I'm learning things that you learn as a parent, learning how to potty train, and I'm 22. I never expected to learn those things and teach kids like that, but I love building the relationships with them and making meaningful experiences, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love going to school every day and seeing those kids. When they say I miss you or I love you, it just makes the job so much more worth it.
Especially going through the COVID years. Now, I don't know how many of you were teaching during that. Nobody else was really doing that. So let's first start with that. Did you see that to be?
So COVID was difficult because at that time, when I just came to Shikellamy this year, I was teaching second grade for 7 years, and second grade they play together and they do lots of things hands-on and learning together, and that's where you see the most success. But during COVID they couldn't share anything, so they couldn't work together, they couldn't sit by a peer, they couldn't share supplies. And when we were in and out of school, a lot of things were on, say, Google Classroom, but we didn't have enough time to even prepare them to use Google Classroom effectively and appropriately. So very different from, say, today, because thankfully I have all 22 kids in my classroom with me, and it's much easier to get them engaged and learning and seeing their growth because it's right in front of you as opposed to through a screen.
teaching during COVID was definitely a difficult time. In my previous district, I was then placed as a classroom teacher and learning support teacher at the same time. So I had 15 learning support students along with several other regular ed students. And from a learning support teacher perspective, COVID definitely left a gap in learning, an instructional gap and a teaching gap. We didn't get to finish curriculum. And so now working with middle school age, I definitely see the gaps in our students when it comes to socialization a lot of times. Elementary years are foundational, so when we're talking current 6th and 7th graders missing 3rd, 4th, some of them missed 5th as well, definitely poses a difficulty in the mindset of the students when we're still kind of functioning at an elementary level emotionally and socially, but we're, trying to push this curriculum. Not push it, but teach them curriculum where they still have that gap in instruction.
And then going back to the previous one, so for the people that you may even know that you think would make a good teacher, and I'm going to use Radicate because you chose this after.
Sure.
So what would you say to those people who are saying, well, you get off for 4 months, all the negatives that come.
Sure. I mean, I just say that we put in the work during the school year, and even when we're off during the summer, we're still doing things educational. I'm a wrestling coach, so with that, always putting in work in the off season, doing things like that, as well as with teaching, you're always trying to build on your curriculum. What are the things that I could improve on from my first lessons that I could build on in the future? So it's things like that you're always kind of reflecting on and kind of going back to. But talking about COVID and everything, going back to that, I don't know if everybody else, but we actually didn't really have too much experience in the classroom either. So like all the times when we were in college, when we were supposed to be going out into schools and kind of getting that first feel in a classroom, we didn't have that experience because of mandates and everything. So we were not able to do that. So it was actually it was kind of like a shock when we finally actually were able to get into the classroom to see it for the first time. And like I said, I'm very happy to do what I'm doing and everything, but it's definitely been a learning experience and growing every single day.
And I would say that teachers hold a very important puzzle piece to the whole world. We teach tomorrow's future. We know that the kids are what are going to be the adults someday. And when we go home, we don't get to decide that we clock out and we're not a teacher anymore. The teaching job never ends. We go home and we think about our kids. We think about how we can change things. We talk to parents and communicate. It really never stops. So even though we get the weekends off and the nights off and the summers off, I don't think for a lot of us it ever stops, especially because a lot of us put time into sports and extracurriculars and programs like STEAM during the summer to make sure that our kids are still growing and safe and having a good experience.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
what you said, like how during COVID, we had to do a lot of virtual learning. I was supposed to do an autistic support classroom in Hazleton, but it was all online. So I didn't get the experience I'd want to, and it probably would have made me a better teacher from the start if I got that experience piece. But also, like you said, we're working throughout the summer. We do the summer school program, the sports, setting up their classroom for the next year, prepping for the next school year, what worked, what didn't work. So we're not just having the summer off. You're just continuing working for the next school year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people who think we work 7 to 3, that's no, we most certainly do not. I wake up before my alarm goes off in the morning, and I am running over all the things that I need and want to do for my students and in my classroom. I work the after school program until 5 o'clock, go home, eat dinner, and then I work until 8:30. And the weekends I'm doing schoolwork. It's not easy stuff, and it's just, you're not working 7 to 3. Even with summers off, of course we're in here working on our classrooms, working on our lessons plans and our curriculum. But I mean, I wouldn't change it. I had a really good job before I decided to become a teacher. If I would have stayed in that job, I would be making a really great salary. I would be building a very successful career, but I didn't like my job because I wasn't doing anything to make a difference. I wanted to do something where the future would be better. I want to, when I leave this earth, leave some sort of legacy, some sort of impact, just leave the earth better than when I came, and I wasn't doing that in my job. And so I'll take the pay cut. I don't care. I love my job.
And I know that you're a football coach as well, so you're like in the building all the time and then doing stuff after school. So is it more than what you thought was going to be?
No,
Or are
I
these
mean,
self-inflicted wounds?
no, I mean, I chose it for sure. That's like part of the job though, is being able to like just do things you love. And one thing like why I wanted to be a teacher personally is because like sports have like been my life since I can remember. So for me to be able to come in and share my knowledge of sports, like I think being just like a college athlete too, having that type of background, coming in and being able to just share what I know, especially with like guys. I coach football, so giving my like philosophies, my experiences and stuff to help them grow as not just players, because that's obviously important, but grow as student and men, and then the one woman we have on the team, try to just make them better people generally. I mean, I don't regret coming in every day at like 6:45, 7, and leaving at like 7. I have my time on the weekends and stuff, but it's more about making the impact to like the younger generation, and I know that's really what teaching in general is all about. I think that's why we're all here.
I was just going to say, this is my 12th year of teaching, and so I'm more experienced than some of the ones sitting around the table. But when I first started out teaching, I was in North Carolina for 5 years. And so being in North Carolina and comparing that to being here in Pennsylvania, I feel so much more blessed. So when I hear that people are discouraged about getting into this profession because of salary or things like that, in North Carolina, I was making significantly less than what I make here, and not because of years of experience, but because of differences with unionization and things like that. But I feel like overall, if working with kids is what you love, salary should never deter you from doing what you love, ever.
So that's where I was going, because if I'm just sitting here and I'm saying, I'm going to be a teacher, and I'm asking you, giving me no good points to become a teacher, it sounds like it's all day long. You have to deal with public, you have to deal with kids, sometimes unruly kids, you don't make much money. So is it because of the love of education, or just because it's the love of
It's the kids.
It's the kids.
And when I just started last year, and I still every day have a group of about 7 or 8 of them that come to my classroom every day after lunch because they want to give me a hug, they want to talk to me, they want to see me, and I've been able to form those relationships with students this year. Like, when you have the love of the kids and then you form that rapport with them, nothing else matters. The data doesn't matter, the salary doesn't matter, the time you spend doing everything for everyone doesn't matter. They matter.
So you asked me before this started, the brutal truth. So tell me, what's the hardest part about this job then, at any given point where you said, oh, I don't know. And I know it's about the love for the kids and the whole 9 yards, but nobody can sit here and say that at one point you didn't sit here and say.
It's not always rainbows and butterflies. It's not. I think the biggest challenge is time. Having all the time to want to put into everything. I could spend hours planning and prepping for, tomorrow, my next week. It's just, you have to at some point say, all right, okay, now I'm going to go home and take care of the 2 kids that I have at home. Or, I have a meeting during my prep today, so I can only stay till 5 o'clock. And that just has to be okay. So once you get your feet wet and, you're good with curriculum and academics and students and data and all that, then you decide, okay, well, now I have to get my credits for Act 48 to get my level 2. And now I have to get, I want to get a master's. And then you spend all your time bettering yourself to be better for your kids. So I think really for me the biggest challenge is having to turn it off. Mm-hmm. I wish I could spend all day every day. It's just not possible.
Go ahead.
I would go off of the time too, and when we're talking about COVID, like the deficits that have been left in students with COVID, there is not enough time in our day to address everything, all the needs that need to be met. And so for me specifically, I work with all 5 academic subjects. I have to be on point with who's doing what, when they're doing it, when they have tests, when so on and so forth. And sometimes it's very overwhelming because being pulled in 5, 6 different directions with 30 different kids. And so not only the time of shutting it off, but the time of, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all of this done in this short amount of the school day? And you don't, like, the not wanting to disappoint anyone
Sure.
if you can't complete it within that time allotted.
I think kind of like the unknown for me personally was what kind of scared me about being a teacher. I think that's kind of like, I always wanted to be a teacher, like since high school, but what discouraged me and kind of scared me was the fact that I didn't know if I could help every single student I met. So like in my class, like right now what worries me and like scares me as an educator is that, am I doing enough for a certain student, or am I doing too much for one student's feeling left out? Like today, life skills, the unknown, I didn't give a kid a high five and it like ruined his day. And like that like hurt me personally, but it was something just as simple as like a high five. And that every day is just like I wake up and like hoping I do enough for the student. Like that's kind of what drives me to be better at my profession. And but also what scares me about the profession is that maybe like one student I can't give them everything I have, rather than just like one little mess up could hurt their education.
Yeah, someone said turning it off, and that's like the biggest thing for me, telling myself when it's okay to just like put things down and move on to something else, or knowing that you can't help everybody. Like we have hundreds of students, like just accepting the fact that it's okay to not be perfect all the time, and to not have every lesson be perfect, and knowing that you can improve upon yourself. It's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. I know for me personally, I just want everything to be great, and just accepting the fact that we have a lot of growth ahead of us, and we're not perfect, and we'll probably never be perfect, but we'll get there.
I would say the hardest thing so far from my experience has been that because there's so much diversity, when the kids go home, you don't always know what's happening, and you want to be able to be there for them at all times and know that they're safe, but it's just impossible to always be knowing exactly what's happening. So what I've just had to tell myself is to remember that when you are with them and when you are there, you are making a difference for them, and you may be the safe place for them. So just keeping that in mind is really important.
All right, I'm gonna end with two questions. The first one being, why do you guys think now there is a teacher shortage? Because I know years ago there really wasn't. It was very. And then, and then the last one, what would be your advice to somebody, obviously like him, who wants to get into teaching, and steps that they should take, and who they should, follow going forward? But go ahead, you want to answer the first one pretty quick.
I think a big challenge is mental health, because there's a lack of support from the public. It does kind of fall back on a lot of teachers. Your mental health can slip because you're constantly putting all you have to other people. But like the district has started the 7 mindsets this year, and they've said you kind of live what you do. So if you're teaching this, you're really living it and feeling it inside yourself. So finding a district that can support your mental health and shows that it matters to them, I think is really important.
I'm gonna go right around over here.
Kind of going off what you said, like mental health is a really big important thing, and like sometimes like people like take that for granted, and especially like parents, staff, like they don't see that, and I think you need to be like the advocate for your students and for yourself at the same time. Like do things that are gonna make positive impacts like in your day and the students' day.
And you think that's leading to a shortage of teachers?
I think that there's too much negativity put upon education, especially public education. If I was a current junior or senior in high school, I might not be thinking, yeah, let's go for education. Not when there's tons of articles that put education down. There's tons of other means of education that people could go toward that would maybe sway them in that direction instead of public education in a brick or mortar school. So I think if there would be more positivity surrounding us, perhaps that would boost people's interest in becoming a teacher.
I think that possibly one of the reasons why there's a shortage in teachers right now is that when we were in high school, or maybe some of us were in high school, we were kind of deterred away from it. We were told that education, that there was a lot of teachers that didn't have jobs at the time because there was too many teachers. So we were kind of told that, hey, like maybe teaching isn't the best profession right now if you want to find a job right away. And I think what happened is it deterred almost everybody. So that when there was that time when they did need teachers, there wasn't anybody there, because a lot of people that may have had the desire to go be a teacher were kind of told, hey, this might not be the best decision. Look at the salary. You don't get the best salary. There's way too many of them right now. You might not get a job right away. You might be stuck doing something different. So I think a lot of people were deterred because of being scared that they might not get a full-time position right off the bat.
I would agree off of the kind of the negativity route. I think public education is obviously highly publicized, and there's a lot of negative energy around it. And so when people are going into their professional career, they want to have the American dream. They want to live this rich lifestyle, or, do things that are rewarding financially. And, with this negativity around it, it's not, let me think of my words. Sorry. It's not like, if you want to know more about it, you don't listen to those outlets. Like, you need to go into it and experience it for yourself. You never learn anything just by watching the media or the news or anything. You need to put yourself into it if it's something that you're interested in, if that makes sense.
And you're kind of a public figure, so if you go out somewhere and you're with your friends and somebody sees, they say, hey, she's a teacher or he's a teacher or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, but you can't let that news, like news or publicity, inundate your mind. You have to go into it for yourself.
I don't know, I guess salary might scare people. I mean, there's a lot more jobs. You can be making a lot of money, honestly.
Yeah.
I got my first paycheck and I live in my parents' basement, so when I got that first paycheck to hit my bank, I was pretty excited. Right now, I feel like I'm rich because I don't really have many responsibilities as of I have a dog as my son. I pay for him. We take some trips to PetSmart, but other than that, I don't really pay for too much. So I guess the salary for me,
That's the best answer.
I don't really mind the salary part. I think it's like any job. You got to work hard to reach your way to the top. Everyone, I think, has aspirations of being better. And making more money, and you can do that in education. There's obviously a track. You can go from being a teacher to administration, possibly teaching college, and any job. Let's say if you're a financial advisor at a bank, you're going to start at a consultant and work your way up, and then possibly being a CEO. There's obviously a big money change there. There's a big money change in general education. It's just you have to work for it. I don't think any lazy person would come into education, because you have to work for students, you have to work for your administration, you have to work to better yourself. So
get him a raise, whoever's back there.
Yeah, that just makes me think of Dr. MK. Dr. MK was my middle school computer teacher, and look at her now. She's the best assistant superintendent ever. I know when I was in high school, a lot of people went into education. So many of my classmates were going into education, and it was that whole there are so many teachers, not everybody's going to get a job. And I know when my friends started graduating, they were having a really hard time getting a job. And so it was there is a surplus of teachers at that point. And I think that did discourage a lot of people from going into the profession. That's not a problem anymore, so go to school to be a teacher.
And I just asked two of you, what is your advice to somebody coming out to be a student?
Yeah, I know when I left high school and going into education, I was super excited for it, because you get to touch so many lives that you don't even realize. Especially when you start doing your observations and stuff, and you start going into schools, you're going to be this person, especially with little kids, that they're going to look up to automatically. You being a shikellamy football player, you have so many students already and so many kids that look up to you that you don't even realize. It's kind of cool being that individual in a school, or that individual in the community. But one thing about education, there's GPA requirements. You can't go to college and just kind of wing it. You got to put in the work. There was times I wish I was a better student. I wish I would have studied, but I got by just being smart. I just got by doing me.
For football.
I was.
No, we had physics together. He was good.
Oh, B- in physics, but you just got to put in the work, and it's one of those things you can't be lazy, because education, you can't be lazy being a teacher, or else your students aren't going to get what they need. That's really just put in the work.
I've wanted to be a teacher since I was in kindergarten, and it's honestly the most rewarding job in the entire world. I don't think anybody can have a student that they've never had come up to them and tell you that, you're the best teacher in the world. Like, I've never had them, so that was quite flattering. But at a 9 to 5, none of your coworkers are going to come up and give you a hug and tell you that you are doing the best job in the world. So it's totally different. It's so rewarding, and every day when you get up to go to work, you know that you get to see their little smiles, and you can't get that anywhere else.